I'd like to talk for a moment about some environmental issues. I grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan and moved to, well, actually I lived in Africa, in Lesotho for 2 years and worked in Africa for an additional 2 years and lived in Bangladesh for 9 years. So I've seen poverty, I've seen how people use resources. I've lived most of my life in Canada, of course. Raised in Saskatchewan, spent some time in Manitoba, and I've been retired here on Vancouver Island for the last for the last 8 years. And I must say that in BC, you hear an awful lot more talk about saving the environment. And maybe it's because I've lived overseas and I grew up on a farm, but I detect quite a bit of hypocrisy on what gets said. Now, David Suzuki, of course, is from BC as well, and maybe it's not surprising that line of thought would come from him as well. So let me just you hear talk about the tar sands in Alberta and the rainforest. We're cutting down too many trees in the rainforest in the Amazon, and there's all this problem with fracking to get it at natural gas, and all of these things are bad. Well, that's all on the supply side, but I think the problem is not on the. These are companies that are trying to supply the demand that those of us who are building houses and driving cars, we're demanding these products. The problem is not on the supply side. The problem is on the demand side. I think it was Pogo who said, "We have seen the enemy, and the enemy is us." And I think we need to have some additional discussion about this. And I would like to sit in on some of the BC classrooms and hear what the teachers are saying about the environmental issues to students. And I would suspect that almost always the villain is the oil and gas companies and the pipeline companies and the logging companies who are harvesting these resources. And almost nothing is talked about how we're consuming more than we should. Granted, there are some people who say that the what's the big truck called? I forgot the name of it. The big four-wheel drive one that Arnold Schwarzenegger drives. It's true that some people do talk about that as being an inappropriate kind of a vehicle, but that's about all. I happen to live on Arbutus Ridge. It's a retirement community, 50-plus community in the Cowichan Valley. And it's a great place. I enjoy living here. We do try to call ourselves an environmentally friendly community. We separate our garbage into organics and non-organics. When we go to the store, we dutifully take our bag with us so we don't have to get a paper bag to bring our groceries home. So we're doing what we can to save the environment. But we also have some rules that there can only be 2 people living in each house. Our house is about average, maybe slightly larger than average, but I don't think so. We have about 3,400 square feet. So that works out to 1,700 square feet per person. If we want to dry our clothing, we can't put it on a clothesline outside to dry in the sun and the wind. We have to put it in our dryer and use electricity to dry it. We can have ornamental plants in our yard, but we can't have a vegetable garden. And I can imagine the hue and cry there would be if we tried to have a small rabbitry or 5 or 6 chickens in our backyard. None of that is allowed. So if we really wanted to be a green community, we should be saying that if there's only 2 people, there shouldn't be any more than, let's say, 1,000 or 1,200 square feet for 2 people. and that we should be able to dry our clothes outside when it's a nice sunny day with a little bit of a breeze, or that we can have a garden in our backyard. If we could allow some of those things, then I would be more sympathetic to the argument that we're a green environment and we're trying to do what we can to save the environment. And if the Green Party were making those kind of arguments, that we need to limit the size of houses for 2 people. I don't know what the number would be, but let's say 500 square feet per person for an adult. So if there's 2 people, no more than 1,000 square feet, and perhaps an extra 200 square feet for each child. If they were espousing views like that, then I would say that they're being even-handed, talking about both the supply side and the demand side, but they're not. If you Google the size of the house for what's his name, the old vice president, Al Gore. He's got I think it's 8,000 or 10,000 square foot house. He apparently uses something like 10 times the amount of energy to heat and cool his house as the average American. Why don't people take him to task? He's talking about the need to conserve our resources and try to avoid global warming, but yet he lives in a house that takes 10 to 12 times as much energy as the average American. And there's more than a little bit of hypocrisy in that regard. And how many of us, without really spending a lot of time thinking about it, take a fly to Mexico or to Palm Springs for 1 or 2 weeks in the wintertime? Maybe we fly over to Hawaii each year. These are the kind of things that take energy. And if we're really worried about the tar sands and cutting down the trees in the Amazon and fracking to get at natural gas, if we're really worried about doing that, then let's reduce the consumption of energy that we're involved in North America. If we do that, then I'm prepared to accept the fact that we need to look at fracking and not developing the oil sands and cutting down the trees in the Amazon rainforest. But unless we're prepared to look at the demand side, then I think there's a problem. And as Pogo said, we have seen the enemy, and the enemy is us.